and welcome to this week's The Sports Lounge. I'm Nathan Stacken. Here are some of the things we will be discussing in this week's show. We'll be recapping the NFC and AFC championship games and talking a little bit about Super Bowl 45 between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Green Bay Packers. Drew Ahman and Travis Kriens will be talking about SDSU basketball and some of the other sports from around SDSU. We'll be having our game show segment, True False, on some of the big headlines in sports. And we will also be talking about Jay Cutler and his exiting from the NFC championship game. And with that, I'd like to welcome you to the Sports Lounge. I'm Nathan Stacken. Alongside me is Travis Kriens. We have Blake Day and Charlie Hildebrand. Drew Ahman will be joining us shortly. Well, guys, let's go right into and we'll discuss the AFC Championship game first between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the New York Jets. I don't know why I forgot that. Probably because they're a memory now, a distant memory. The Pittsburgh Steelers won 24-19 in a game that the Pittsburgh Steelers dominated in the first half, but in the second half, the Jets made a run. And I'd just like to get your guys' thoughts from the game. Were you surprised by the outcome?
I wasn't really surprised by the outcome. In a lot of ways, it was kind of like an old school game. You know, the Pittsburgh Steelers effectively ran the ball. They shut down the run and ended up winning the game. And you know, when it's really cold, what they said the wind chill was 5 degrees or something like that. So in a game like that, obviously, running the ball is a lot easier than throwing it. So, you know, they controlled the running game, and I think that was really what led them to victory.
Yeah, I completely agree. I expected Pittsburgh to win. I guess I was a little surprised that Pittsburgh ran it so effectively. You know, because we talked about how they've got such a banged-up offensive line. They lose Mike Pouncey early on in that game, and then they just ran it down the Jets' throat. You know, the defense played solid like it has all year, and Ben Roethlisberger just makes plays when he needs to. You know, he's a clutch quarterback.
I mean, I was shocked at the Jets' comeback there late in the first half when they got that field goal, and then throughout the second half. I thought, you know, Sanchez played pretty well considering, you know, he was hurt there at the end of the first half. And he did stay in the game, actually, with the injury. So that was good to see.
Did Troy Polamalu make a huge impact in this game? Because he missed in their first matchup back in Week 15 in which the Steelers lost 22-17. So was he the difference in this game, do you think, for the Steelers winning? Was he that crucial on defense?
I'll say the running game did it for him. Mendenhall and that offensive line, which was sketchy at times, and even though they had an injury, they they had a big enough lead there in that first half where it didn't come back to bite them in the second half.
Polamalu, I mean, did you really even hear his name called that much?
No, not really.
It didn't seem like he was really doing a whole lot. Obviously, his presence there makes a difference. Just knowing that he's there is going to be, you know, like in Sanchez's mind, as you're throwing, you got to be aware of where he's at. But he really didn't make any, you know, huge impact on the game yesterday.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think he didn't have any direct impact. But, you know, I'm sure if you looked at the tape, you could see plays he made without actually literally making the tackle. But like Travis said, I think the biggest thing was just the running game both ways. That was the biggest difference for the Steelers as opposed to the regular season matchup.
The Jets rushed for the most yards against the Pittsburgh Steelers in the regular season, had 106 yards in their Week 15 matchup. But they only had 1 yard in the first half against the Pittsburgh Steelers defense. Do you think that threw the Jets out of their rhythm and out of what they wanted to do on offense in the first half?
Absolutely. I mean, the Jets are a run-first team. That's what they do, and that's typical, you know, Pittsburgh defense right there, though. I mean, that defense has been, you know, carrying them for quite a while, and yeah, absolutely. I think that that really threw the Jets off.
I just question the decision there in the fourth quarter when they're down at the 1 yard line. It's 2nd and goal from the 1.
That was awful.
And they pass it on 2 straight plays. When you had Sean, and instead of having Tomlinson run it on 4th down, I would have had Sean Green because Tomlinson was ineffective the whole game. And Sean Green showed that he could get some stuff done. So you have 3 chances to pick up 1 yard to get this in within a 7-point game. And they did not do it, which is amazing.
But do you think that the Pittsburgh, they were anticipating the Steelers would recognize or would think they would try and run it in, and instead they wanted to try and throw it and catch them off guard and by surprise? It just didn't work 2 times.
I don't think it should matter.
But is having LaDainian Tomlinson in on 4th down, was that where they went? Because I would have had Sean Green in there because Sean Green's the more powerful back. LT is more finesse. I don't know if I would have had him in there on 4th down.
No, I don't care if I'm facing the greatest defense ever and I'm the worst team ever. If I can't get 1 yard in 3 chances, then I don't deserve to win the game. And that's what the game is.
And not just that, the New York Jets, who claim to be, the most physical team and the best offensive line frequently in the NFL. I mean, if you've got 3 chances from the 1 and you're only running it on 4th down from the 1, I mean, that's ridiculous. Old Schottenheimer should probably get fired for that.
He will not. They will bring him back.
There has been talk,
but they will bring him back. They say.
Let's just look ahead for the Jets into next year. Is this team going to be able to make it back to their 3rd straight AFC Championship game? Or is maybe the luck going to run out a little bit? Because what goes around comes around. And the Jets, for all the talk that they have and saying we're going to beat New England, now do they maybe have to reshift their focus to getting out of the AFC Championship game into the Super Bowl? Because they've made it twice in Rex Ryan's 2 years there, and they haven't made it to the Super Bowl in either of those
I think they've got a great chance to make it to the Super Bowl next year. As long as Ryan's there with their defense, I think their defense is going to be really good, one of the best in the NFL. And it kind of looked like Mark Sanchez. I mean, I thought he outplayed Ben Roethlisberger, other than, a few plays at the end there where Roethlisberger completed 1st down passes. Other than that, I thought he played better. And if he keeps progressing, I think they can really become, maybe even a dynasty possibly over the next 5 years or so.
The Steelers' chances now, we will preview the Super Bowl in depth next week, but do they have a pretty good shot, do you think, given how they played against the Jets and the Ravens? Don't forget that. Do they have a pretty good shot, do you think, to go in and win the Super Bowl?
Well, of course they have a shot. I mean, with that defense and with Ben Roethlisberger at quarterback and with the running game that came alive, they obviously have a shot, yeah.
What concerns me is how well they played in that first half, but how poorly they played in the second half. And without that miscue at the 1, we're talking a few more points on the board for the Jets and probably even a Jets win maybe. So, what Steelers team is going to show up?
All right. When we come back, we will take a short break. Come back, and then we will talk about the NFC Championship game. The Green Bay Packers are going to their 5th Super Bowl, looking for their 4th Super Bowl win. We'll be discussing how they beat the Bears. You are watching the Sports Lounge. Hello and welcome back to the Sports Lounge. I'm Nathan Stacken. We already recapped the AFC Championship game between the New York Jets and the Pittsburgh Steelers, with the Pittsburgh Steelers moving on to Super Bowl 45, where they will await the Green Bay Packers. The Packers beat the Chicago Bears 21-14 in yesterday's NFC Championship game, in a game in which Jay Cutler exited, which we'll have more on him later in the show, but the Bears didn't have a lot of offense. The Packers started out with a bang, got up 14-0 fairly early, and coasted to a 21-14 win. And as I turn to the group now, it wasn't the type of game that I think a lot of people thought we would get in terms of Green Bay's offense, stellar through the first 2 weeks. And the Bears looked great against Seattle, and then Cutler leaving with an injury, and just a whole lot of things happened throughout the game. Where do you think it went wrong for the Bears?
Quite frankly, it was one of the worst championship games I remember.
I would
watching.
agree with that.
It was not good. Where it went wrong for the Bears, well, their offense couldn't do anything in that first half. And Jay Cutler, we'll get into him more later, but It's not really all that much of a bad thing that he went down with an injury, because they were a ton more effective with him out of the game. But that, as we saw last week, a lot of the people there picked that Green Bay defense versus the Bears defense, and I think the Green Bay defense was the difference for them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we did talk about that quite a bit last week. The Green Bay's defense, it's very underrated, and Dom Capers, he runs a great system there. And, Clay Matthews, we talked about that secondary. The defense came through, and Green Bay was able to run the ball pretty effectively with James Starks, even though Rodgers really wasn't on top of his game. But, yeah, we hang it on the defense really on that one.
I thought the Bears' defense played pretty well. They just did not get much help from their lethargic and anemic offense. I think if they could have gotten a little bit, a little more out of the passing game, or if they just have any skill position players that were worth anything, then maybe they could have made something happen. But Green Bay's defense played well. They only scored 2 offensive touchdowns, but they got one on the first drive, and all in all moved the ball a lot better, and I think that was the big difference.
I want to get to B.J. Raji in a second because he had a great pick, but I want to talk about perhaps the play of the game was Aaron Rodgers and his touchdown-saving tackle on Brian Urlacher, I immediately thought of Ben Roethlisberger in the divisional game against the Colts a few years back when Pittsburgh won their Super Bowl back in 2006. Jerome Bettis had fumbled when he didn't, and the Colts were probably going to score a touchdown, but Roethlisberger made that tackle. So did Urlacher take a bad angle? Was it just a great play by Rodgers? What did you see in that?
As cold as it was outside, I think I'll give Rodgers credit. I don't know if maybe Urlacher couldn't quite get his juking shoes on.
Well, he got juked out earlier.
He did earlier. So, when it's 5 degrees outside or whatever, sometimes you can't move as quickly. So I'll give credit to Aaron Rodgers and not knock Urlacher too much then.
Yeah, I would completely agree. I mean, Aaron Rodgers is a really good athlete, and he's just a guy that he's really going to do anything it takes to win. Obviously, in that kind of situation, you would think most quarterbacks would try to do that, but no, I give a lot of credit to Aaron Rodgers on that play.
And when he picked it, I immediately thought if he doesn't run this back, they're not going to score. They have to run it back.
Right.
And Urlacher, used to be a safety in college and has this 4.5, 4.6 speed they claim, back then. But 10 years later, come on. If it's a foot race, I may take Rodgers over Urlacher.
I would as well.
So, bad angle, whatever, I expected Rodgers to make the play.
Aaron Rodgers had played really well, and I think that's an understatement, to be honest with you, through the first 2 games of the playoffs. He struggled a little bit in this game, started out really good, had a rushing touchdown. He was in sync with Greg Jennings throughout most of the game. Threw a bad pick inside the red zone when the Packers could have gotten a field goal and put the game away at that point. What did you see from his game? Did he just take what the defense? Chicago's got a great defense, so how well do you think that the Bears played him, and did Rodgers take advantage of what he did? How great his performance?
Honestly, I don't know if I'd read into it a great deal. I mean, they're probably the best defense he's played so far in the playoffs, but it's cold outside. They're, in Chicago, you can't regrow grass in January. They're on an awful field. And all this, and they can't run the ball super effectively, but they ran it fairly well at times. But all that together, I think it was just he was a little bit off. And, when they're playing in the Super Bowl under regular controlled conditions, I think that'll be a lot different then.
Yeah, I'm really not going to have much to add to that. I mean, Charlie put it perfectly. Take the combination of Chicago's defense. He's just a really solid defense, tough weather conditions, and yeah, he's not a guy that's going to be caring about his stats a whole lot. Take what the defense gives you and just do what you can to get a victory.
Well, he came out lights out in that first drive, and then they scored on the first drive of the second half, and that's all they did the entire game. And field position had a lot to do with that because it was in Green Bay's favor for most of that first half.
Yep, absolutely. Just touching on their defense quick, with Sam Shields having 2 picks, including the one to save the game for the Packers and get them to the Super Bowl. Is this one of the more clutch defenses you've seen? And they are a ball hawking defense. They've forced 9 turnovers, I believe, already in the postseason. Will they have success against Pittsburgh in the Super Bowl?
It reminds me of the Saints' defense last year with all the turnovers that they get. I think their defense overall is better than the Saints were last year, but like the Saints, they get a lot of big turnovers when they need it.
Yeah, and I mean, this defense, in the last few years, they've went really heavy on addressing that defense in the draft. I mean, you look at B.J. Raji, Clay Matthews first-round picks. Tremont Williams has come out to be a steal. That's just, I think you're right. That's a very clutch defense, just a lot of big-time, performers on that team.
Yeah, I agree with both of what you guys said. And to take what Travis said, I think they're a lot like the Saints last year, except instead of just forcing turnovers, they're actually really good on defense on top of that, too. Yeah. And tough to beat that.
All right, don't think that we have forgotten about Jay Cutler exiting the game and Caleb Haney, who, by the way, I don't think anyone had as an X factor for yesterday's game.
No.
Don't think we're going to just completely forget about Cutler, because we'll talk about him later in the show. But when we come back, Travis and Drew will be talking about SDSU basketball and all the latest happenings in the sporting world here at SDSU. You are watching the Sports Lounge.